Now today we're working on the 240Z. Specifically, this is the parking rod. This rod connects when you pull up the handbrake. This rod moves, and there's another cable or cables running to the rear wheels. It locks everything up so the car doesn't roll backwards or forwards or whatever the case may be. Now what we have on these is an adjustment rod. So for example, if you ever pull up your handbrake and it comes all the way up, really too far up, you turn this rod and it shortens the throw. So now it's maybe halfway that you're pulling up the handbrake, and that was the goal, and of course it just snapped. Now they don't make this rod anymore, it just doesn't exist anymore. This is a 73 240Z, they just don't make this, so I essentially just created one. I'll include the parts in the description box if you are doing this on a 240Z. Interestingly enough, this is a 1/4 inch. I couldn't really get all the dimensions right. I don't want to go into the numbers. If you are curious, send me a message, but I was able to make everything work regarding the thread count and so forth on a 5/16 inch rod. So that's what we have here. So it's certainly beefier, will last a lot longer. Same with the yoke, it's a lot thicker if you compare the two. So it's a beefier unit for sure. So let me jump over to the bench, just show you all the components. I'll show you how I got everything off, got all the rust off, primered, painted, and we're about to throw it back on the car.
So essentially what you're looking at right here, this attaches to the handbrake inside the vehicle. So when you pull up the handbrake, this lever moves backwards and it pulls on a rod that's connected here, and it pulls, as you can see up here, we have the brake line going directly to both brakes. So essentially it splits off. So one splits off to the rear left, the other one splits off to the rear right. Now what I'm doing here is there's a nut that attaches, there's a bolt here and another bolt here. On the opposite end is a nut. And it's just so old that it's turning. It's just so rusted out. So over here on my left hand, I'm holding a vice grip that's underneath the car right now. And I'll just go ahead and remove the bolt. And there you go. And just to show you the vice grip, here's the other end, okay? So now we need to remove the bracket, and before we do that, we have a Clevis pin. If you're not sure what a Clevis pin looks like, I'll show you in a moment. But it's essentially a pin that has a small hole on the other end, and as you can see right here, is a cotter pin. So I'm just going to clean this up very quickly. Remove all the loose rust. Now the best way to remove cotter pins is get yourself one of these wire cutter pliers. Grip the end. I had to put the camera down just to get this out because I needed both of my hands here, but what I'm going to do is just squeeze the end, and then as a leverage use the back of the pliers against the mount here and just slowly remove the pin, okay? Obviously we'll use a new cotter pin when we reinstall everything. This comes out. Now we can go ahead and remove these 4 10mm bolts. So after 12 hours or so, this is what's left after throwing the parts in that rust remover bin. So I'm just going to clean this up with a wire brush and primer, paint it, and put everything back together. So we cleaned up all the parts the best we could. I really could use a sandblaster to really get them spotless, but with using just wire wheels, I got all of the surface rust off, but you still have some pitting. So what I did, just as a safety net, I applied really good primer, something like Rust Encapsulator, which Eastwood sells, just really good primer,
that stops the rust from spreading if you missed anything. So we have that along with a top coat on, so it's very, very durable. And this is what everything looks like once it's reinstalled in the vehicle. Now very quickly on this end, you'll notice that I have 2 rubber hoses. That's because once I reinstalled everything, there was a lot of free play. And once this vehicle is back on the road, that would have made a very big racket. So with these rubber hoses, this thing's very, very secure. On the opposite end, I have a very, very large washer. And then I have the first nut here sets the tension. And then this is a locking nut. And you'll notice some blue residue. That's thread lock. Now thread lock is something that keeps, in this case, the nut to the rod very, very secure. But if I ever need to remove it, I can remove it. But again, it keeps a very, very solid connection. So let's see what the throw looks like back in the cabin. And then back in the vehicle, as you can see, the parking brake is at its lowest position. And we can just double check, make sure there's no drag, which we don't have any. And then bring it up just a little bit. That's it. Solid. So we're in good shape. So I hope this gives you a pretty good idea on how you can adjust one of these, rebuild them in a sense if you have to. And until next time, thank you for watching.